Okay, you guys are constantly asking, Coop, can you review things that we've never heard of? This is one of those. This is from BruteForce Australia. This is their UX1. It's pretty interesting, and here's why. Has a half rack, squat rack. It's like, most people have that. Has a functional trainer integrated with heavy stacks. Like, oh, that's pretty cool. Has a Smith machine. You're like, ooh, yes. But here's, I think, the big kicker, what's most unique about it. Has all that, plus it folds. This probably has some of the highest versatility on the market currently per square inch of footprint it takes up. Let's get into the review. Hey guys, it's Coop from Garage Gym Reviews. Today I'm reviewing this from BruteForce Australia. This is their UX1 functional trainer with fold. It's designed to basically be an all-in-one, similar to what you'd see from like Force USA, but they also have the ability to fold, including the Smith machine. I'll show you kind of how that works a little bit later, but I think it has a lot of interesting things. Let's get into it. Okay, so I'll start with the half rack and then I'll kind of go through each component. The half rack, as you can see, is a smaller size upright than what you're used to on most of the bigger like Rogues and Reps of the world. It's not a 3x3. It's actually a 50 millimeter by 50 millimeter. For comparison on millimeter, a rep rack is 75 millimeter by 75 millimeter. It's right under 2x2. So it's a smaller upright that has, I was gonna say benefits, but it doesn't really have a lot of benefits. It's mostly negatives. I think one reason they do that, and you find this on a lot of all-in-one machines that are using trolleys on the front, is that's kind of a standard upright for a trolley for a functional trainer, but it can also be used for a squat rack. I would say this is not gonna be able to take most of the accessories you find with a 3x3 rack, but it will be able to take some actually because it has a 1-inch hole on the front, which means you could add some leg rollers and some other things like that because it does have a 1-inch hole. It's actually 25 millimeter, but it's just slightly under 1 inch and will work with some of the 1-inch accessories. The 2x2 upright is chromed, which is nice for basically sliding the trolley for the functional trainer up and down. Where it kind of has some problems is actually in the gauge of steel. There's a lot I like about this and I'll go through it, but one thing that's kind of confusing to me is the uprights on the front are actually using a 16 gauge steel. Most racks that we find today are 11 gauge. The higher the gauge, basically the thinner it is, the lower the gauge, the thicker. But a 16 gauge rack is thinner than what you'd find with both Rogue and Rep racks and other brands that are most typical. But it's also thinner than what you'd find on more the budget end, say the major Ludies of the world, or even the Cap barbells that are most often using 12 or 14 gauge. A 16 gauge is actually very thin. Now I will say, this rack isn't necessarily designed for like the heaviest powerlift in the world. It's more designed for people that want a lot in a small package. And it has a max weight rating of 990 pounds static. Almost got to that 1,000, but 990 pounds, I'd say like it's not something you necessarily need to worry about. I just wish, because BruteForce and most companies watch these when we do them, you gotta come out with a thicker steel. I don't think it would change much of the cost. I will say though, one reason they may do that is to make it lighter so that you can fold it in, which is a remarkable feature of this. As you see on the uprights with the 1-inch holes, they're not using a lot of holes. One of the annoying things about it, they're actually only 16 holes on the front of their upright. I think they're like 3 inches on center or so. Most racks that are using 1-inch holes are 2 inches on center, so you're gonna have a little bit fewer holes, but for most people and most type of workouts, it's not gonna be a big deal. They're not laser cutting or etching numbers on the front of the uprights, which I wish they did. They do on the side of the uprights for the functional trainer trolleys, but they don't on the front. But like most racks, it's pretty standard. It comes with J-cups and half spotter arms. If you're gonna do barbell workouts, you can do them just fine. You're not gonna have any really problems with the Smith machine getting in the way. I'll talk about why here in a moment, but you're gonna have as much space as you want to actually do it. If you like using a half rack, personally, I like them a lot. I actually like them better than a power rack. Just understand, like this isn't like the heaviest duty power rack that you can find in the world. But then to the functional trainer, which things start getting more interesting. The functional trainer, you can actually notice from the orientation of the stacks, it's kind of similar to the Rep Eris 2.0. You remember the Rep Eris 1.0 that basically had the stacks facing this way and then they turned them? Well, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Rep was inspired in some way by this. Maybe they're not. I mean, it's not like that crazy of a change. But basically, instead of them facing parallel, they're now perpendicular to you, which means you're taking up even less space. It's as far back to the back as possible. It also has the benefit of being able to see the stacks easily, see the weight you're using easily, and change them easily. Honestly, this is the best orientation I think for the stacks. Right there in the back, in the center where you're not really taking up any useful space, right there, and suddenly you have 200 kilogram or 220 pound stacks. So this thing has 440 pounds of stack, which is kind of surprising both for the price point and who this seems like it's more marketed towards. This thing can get heavy on your functional trainers. Now, it is on a 2-to-1 ratio, which means half that is what's gonna come off on the cables. They do say that their cables they're using are 2,000 pounds rated, and they even sell an Olympic plate adapter in case you wanna go even heavier. For most functional trainer work, you're gonna be more than adequate with the weight that's on here. Really where you're gonna wanna maybe go heavier is on low rows or lat pull downs for some of you. This is not gonna be enough, but they do have the Olympic plate adapter so that you can add that on. Now the functional trainer trolley is using different holes than what's on the front of the upright. They're actually using on the side of the upright. They're small holes. There's quite a few of them, 17 total, and they are laser etched so you can know where you are. It's a very lightweight trolley. It's not like a higher end trolley like we're seeing from say the Rep Aris or Rogue's new FM series rack. But it is one that is very lightweight and easy to move up and down, has a simple plastic lever pop pin. It works just fine. Once you lock it in place, it stays. You don't have to use multiple hands to lock it in. And then the trolley has a pretty far swivel, so you can use it off the side of the rack or the front of the rack. If you look in the back, they're using like this plastic shroud over the back. I will say one thing about this rack is it looks pretty sick. I think like the hexagon cutout logos, it just feels different than most racks that we see. It feels more like a European sports car or something. They also have on the top, which I would probably use very little, but the climbing holds are red, and just that red pop, sounds goofy, but that red pop against the black, the silver, and the gold, I think just looks sick. One thing I will say on the functional trainer is they're using nylon pulleys. The bearings are actually pretty nice bearings, so it's a smooth pull. Obviously, I would prefer aluminum, and can you imagine like a red aluminum anodized pulley on this, or gold? I think it would just pop and look real cool. It's one thing I think more companies are coming on to, but it would be cool if they offered it at least as an upgrade option. Then to the piece that I've fallen in love with. This one in particular, I have a love-hate relationship with. That's the Smith machine. Here's why I have a love-hate relationship with it. I love Smith machine. I added a Smith machine to my garage gym maybe 6 months ago or so, maybe a little bit less. I probably, of all the additions I've made to the garage gym in the past couple of years, it's the one that I use the most. I use that thing all the time. I think Smith machines are very beneficial, especially for home gyms. I've kind of changed my tune on this because for a while I never really used them that much. It just seemed like something that they'd put in Planet Fitness or something. But especially for a home gym, the safety aspect, also the stability component, and just allowing you to focus on the muscle you want to work is awesome. One reason they're so awesome is because they're on a fixed plane. So it's just a fixed plane, up and down, there's no side-to-side movement. Well, that's why I have a hate relationship with this as well. I love that it has a Smith machine, but the hate side of it is the fact that they call it a live Smith machine. A live Smith machine, woo! It's not good. This is the reason it's not good. It takes one of the main components of a Smith machine, the thing that you want, which is a stable, fixed bar, and it makes it move up and down side to side. So they say it's more of a benefit because it feels more natural, more like a barbell. It's kind of in between a barbell and a Smith machine. I say it's worse because I would just use a barbell if I wanted more movement. But I think the reason they did that is because they probably have to, because this thing folds. So anytime you have an engineering decision, there's a give and a take. The give on this is the fact that it folds and takes up only 22 inches from the wall when folded, which is ridiculous for how much this can do and how much it has. The downside is they have to make it so the Smith machine bar is foldable. So you essentially have to unlock the Smith machine bar, fold it up, and then put it in an upright tube, which is actually a pretty cool design. But because you have to do that, it makes it so that the Smith machine bar is a live Smith machine bar. For a lot of people and a lot of movements, it may not be a huge deal. I don't think it's a deal breaker, but it's something to be aware of if you're buying this and you're used to, say, a commercial gym that has a fixed Smith machine. This one is neither counterbalanced, which most on racks aren't today, but it also has side-to-side movement, so something to be aware of. Then to the folding mechanism, which is one of the coolest features of this rack. It folds. It goes from essentially being right under 60 inches or so in depth to 22 inches, which is very thin, which is what I think makes this so good for a small, compact home gym. Let me show you kind of how it folds and how quickly it does it. Okay, to fold it, you start by unlocking this side, brings down the carriage. You then have this knob. They actually changed this knob. It used to be a different knob. This knob is superior. Unlock it there. You then, probably want to get this spotter out of the way, fold, and look at this. It folds up. This part's pretty cool. Then they have an Olympic size tube there, locks in. You then have to fold this down, which is just a pin. Make sure it doesn't hit you, because as soon as that falls, bring it over here all the way to the side. If you want some extra room, you can bring this down. This comes over. Then these two unlock, and you just have to use your foot. Unlock, unlock. You can then fold them in. And as you can see, like, anybody could fold this. It's wide enough. They lifted it just enough. It's actually a pretty cool design. And then if you want to lock it in, it's really simple too. So you fold this in first, goes all the way back. Then you can lock the feet if you want. And that's it. I mean, you can see, come from the side. I mean, it is thin. This could go up against the wall even further if you didn't want to use Olympic plates, but I mean, pretty thin for what it can do. Okay, so to value, how does this compare versus all of the other kind of all-in-one racks? And there are a lot of them, both on the lower, cheaper budget end, like your RitFits, Major Duties, Major Ludi, also like ER King, Makolo, those type of things. And then you have a little bit more mid-tier, higher end, which we have from Rogue, Rep, your Bolts, Force USA, jacked up brands, those types, which this actually, I think, goes against very well. The reason that I think this is interesting is because it has all the similar features as you'd find on like a Force USA or a jacked up brands rack, but it folds. And that's where I think the most interesting part. If you don't need the folding aspect of this and aren't going to fold it, honestly, I think there's probably better values and better options. This one is nice. I like it. I like the way it looks. There's really nothing else that really looks like it, but it is $4 grand and you have to pay for shipping. That is pricey. So you have to decide, do you want to pay that much so you can have a folding rack? And will you use the folding rack? I will say, as I showed you, the folding aspect of it is pretty well done. It's pretty easy to use. And once it's unfolded, it works great. You just have to decide if the fold is actually what you want. But I will say, it's pretty cool to see BruteForce, a newer company, coming to the market. I really like this. I like that there's more companies entering the space, and I'm excited to try other BruteForce stuff. If you'd like to see any of them, they have one called the Raptor, which is basically like a lever gym similar to PowerTech that looks really nice. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to try it. But this has been Coop from Garage Gym Reviews. I'll see you next time. Peace.